Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in today. I'm Taven Sparks. I'm a senior here at TCU. I'm studying management and finance. And joined with me, would you guys love to introduce yourselves?
Sure. I'm Pranshu. I graduated in 2015 with a BS in astronomy, physics, and mathematics. I joined Kastha soon after. It's a startup development firm, which is basically we help startups go from nothing to the MVP phase, and which basically is us teaching them what mistakes we have done because we had our hands in a lot of startups, and that basically, turned into a business.
That's awesome.
That's great. I'm Carolyn Phillips. I graduated in 2009, entrepreneurial management major, and I started a food company called Alchemy Pops. So I make gourmet frozen popsicles.
That's awesome.
My name is Darcie Nicholson. I graduated 2013 with a degree in strategic communication and Spanish. And let's see, I run a small company called Go Rings, and we're a cause-based jewelry company.
That's great. So we have a lot of different ranges of companies here. And so let's jump right in, have a good conversation today. What kind of inspired you guys to start your company? And was it back when you guys were in college? What was kind of the initial thought for you guys? Let's start here.
Basically, I didn't start the company. It was started by my friend, but I had the option to either go for a job or work for a business as a partner. And I tried working in a job, but I don't work well with authority for some reason. So it's basically like I like to be respected the way I respect others, and I didn't see that in businesses. So my friend offered me a position as a CTO and a partner. I was like, all right, it's something that I can give a go, but I want these terms to be a part of the company. And he was very, forward about it, and he liked it, and that's what we built.
That's awesome.
That's cool. I can relate, I guess. Going through TCU, I loved my classes, and right at the end, I realized I wanted to go to grad school. And so when I graduated, I ended up getting a master's in sustainability from Arizona State. And while I was there and while I was at TCU, I realized that even though I was in the business school, all of my internships and everything that I was doing were all for nonprofits. I wasn't actually doing anything in the corporate world. And when I graduated, I just had this feeling that I didn't really want to go into business. I wanted to go where I was needed and could make a difference. So I worked in nonprofit for 5 years before I started my company. So the first time I've actually worked at a for-profit company is when I made it up. So yeah, I just kind of always had that sense going through the business school that there was something that I wanted to do, but I wasn't exactly sure what it was. So I joke that I sort of fell sideways into making pops, but it really did come back to wanting to do something that was different, make an impact through the business, and do something that was related to food, not just for food's sake, but for the sake of local farmers and working with nonprofits.
When I was at TCU, I studied abroad twice, once in London and then a semester in Spain, and I just caught the travel bug real hard. I loved it, and I also worked at a summer camp in my summers at TCU and knew that I loved like hands-on service ministry, and so after I graduated, I didn't really have a hankering for what I wanted to do. I heard about this 11-month mission trip to 11 different countries, and I thought, travel, hands-on ministry, sounds great. And so it combined like my two loves, but the only thing is that you had to raise $16,000 to do it. And I was like, as a senior in college, like that's more money than I've ever seen. That's more than my car.
Yeah.
That sounds awful to fundraise. And so, but someone tipped me off. They said, hey, people like to give when they get. I was like, man, you're right. I bet. So I started making these rings that had 11 loops for the 11 countries I was going to, and 7 bindings for the 7 teammates I had, just as a way for people to remember my trip and raise $15 at a time. And I was like, maybe if I stood up in my sorority meeting, I could raise a couple $100. That'd be really neat. Before the time I graduated, it had raised over the $16K that I needed for the trip.
That's awesome.
And so now, because I know that fundraising is an awkward process, even for people who are really called to do something, and excited about it and capable to do it, sometimes that money is a block. So now we exist to help people fundraise for similar trips.
That's great.
That's really cool.
Well, thank you guys so much for sharing. As a senior entrepreneurial management major, I'm sitting here, and I think a lot of students here are unsure of what they want to do next, and I think that's you guys are in that same boat. And sometimes something just comes to you and doors open. Can you guys talk about your experience at TCU and things that happened at TCU that kind of that you learned or kind of helped you when starting your own company or going into where you are now?
I don't know if my experience would coincide with a lot of other people, since I'm an astronomy, physics, mathematics major, and not a lot of people really go into business doing that. But I kind of took it as training in understanding patterns, understanding how symmetries work, how stuff work, which kind of proved helpful as my friends started. Like my partner Avinash, he's a CEO. He started the company 2014, and basically it was a necessity for a friend of his who wanted to build a startup, needed a mobile app, but spent all the money on a website and didn't have enough money left. So my friend found a bunch of connections in India, and as you know, it's cheaper, like much cheaper human resources. And so using that, he built a software for almost nothing, and that kind of gave him an idea, why not do this as a living? And he started the company with the same friend, Kathleen. She's also a alumni. The company's name was Uchila. It was an online marketplace, kind of like Craigslist, but you have to have an .edu account to be able to operate. But it worked really well, and then during the 9 months he was running it, and I was still a student. Being an international student, I'm not allowed to work in a company, but I was working as an advisor. And I saw them going through their problems. I helped them fix the problems, gave me a feeling of how these things work. And I felt like I could do it. And then as I joined, I kept on doing it. And now I'm still doing it. So,
so that works.
What I am.
Yeah. That's awesome. I think when I was a senior, I actually took a class from Dr. Dave Aftendilian as a anthropology minor, and it was about food justice, and it really resonated with me of thinking about agriculture and not just where the food comes from, but the people that are involved in the system of where our food comes from, and thinking through using systems thinking, using decision analysis, and things that we talked about all the time in the business school, and opportunities and threats to the industry, the risk associated with dependence on something that isn't very sustainable. And it just really got me thinking and got me charted on the course. And he was the first professor that said that I should really consider going to grad school. It had really never crossed my mind to do that. And he was nice enough to also come with me, in a sense, to Arizona State. He agreed to be on my master's committee while I was there. And so that was a really influential and transitional moment for me at TCU. And it was outside the business school, but I got to bring what I was learning in the business school to more of a social justice space. And that really influenced my whole trajectory, which I didn't know was leading to a frozen pop company at the time.
Man, there's so many aspects of my time at TCU that have played into Go Rings, and it's start and traction and success now. First, and I think foremost, I studied strategic communication, which is what they call ad PR nowadays. And I think, man, from everything to like branding, messaging, having an online presence, thinking just strategically and who needs to know about this and how can they know about this, was huge for me. And it was neat to be able to do that. It started in the fall of my senior year, so to be able to trek through that with professors and even design and whatnot really helped out. And then, let's see, my degree in Spanish helped because for a time we were producing out of Mexico. We teamed up with an orphanage there that all of the proceeds were benefiting the wages that we paid our workers. And so I got to teach them how to make rings in Spanish. Yeah. It was great. And then, let's see, even I was part of the Honors College here at TCU and took a class called The Nature of Giving. And it really, we had to go through and really learn how nonprofits worked. And I don't have a nonprofit. Go Rings is an LLC. But it made me really aware of how those organizations worked, and that I don't want to own one.
Yeah.
And that there are plenty of ways to do good in the for-profit world.
Yeah.
And then also, I mean, just at a really rudimentary level, I mean, the first people to wear all of our rings were horn frogs.
Right.
You know, got in front of sorority meetings or even like entrepreneurship classes and whatnot. And so that's kind of where the spark caught fire.
That's awesome. I'm actually in that giving class right now, and I think it's an amazing class. And I think there's so much at TCU that gives you perspective to the world from different people on campus and just different classes that you're able to take. I've been able to see that. I'm sad that I'm a senior, that I'm almost graduating, but it's been an incredible experience. And so talking now, moving in kind of the risk of entrepreneurship, I think as an entrepreneurial management major, we kind of hear about starting your own company or going into something new, that there's a lot of risk. Can you guys kind of touch on that transition from, yes, I want to decide to do this new thing, and were there nerves involved? You know, what kind of risks did you guys take, and kind of how did you process that information?
Basically, for me, it was conviction. There were a lot of things I could have done, but I tried to do some of them and I didn't feel confident about them. This is something I did that a lot of people didn't feel confident about me, but I felt confident doing it because I saw a way. Like, I don't know what it is, I can't define it, but I saw a way and it's there, and I step by step, you do little things and you get there, you get closer to your goal that you set, and then you set new goals if you achieve it. And that felt very clear to me, and so it was like a calling, I guess. Yeah. So that basically helped. So I guess knowing, like, don't do for the sake of doing, I guess. Do, if you need to do something, do it.
Yeah.
Because direction is very necessary, otherwise you're just moving around in circles. So I guess that's one thing I would say. That's great.
I feel like starting my business was a process. I think being an entrepreneur, things happen both fast and slow all the time, and you have to really balance that. And so when something looks risky to someone else, it doesn't feel as risky to you because it's been happening. And the next natural step to you does not seem like the next natural step to other people in a lot of ways. And so you get that feedback of like, wow, you're crazy, or like, I can't believe you're doing this, or like, how are you giving up a paycheck? And you hear those things, but your thought process is so different that it doesn't feel that way. And then, yes, there are decisions you have to make in your business where you're like, wow, I have to wire more money than I paid for my car to Brazil tomorrow. Like, that seems odd, but like, I know it's a critical step in the business, and so it doesn't feel as risky because you already know the context in which that is happening. And so from the outside, when people don't understand the context, I mean, it does look crazier than it is, and maybe it is just crazy. I think we are a special kind of crazy, but I think that it's just a mindset, and it can definitely be cultivated. And that's the thing that, you know, the other side of that feedback you get from people a lot is like, wow, I could never do what you're doing, and you're like, wow, that's not even true. Like, you absolutely could do what we're doing. And it's just a mindset that there are just arbitrary limits that you put on yourself, and if you don't acknowledge those, they really aren't there. So risk is a very interesting thing. You don't want to be careless with your resources, but if you don't try, you don't know. So it's always just sort of been that feeling that it's the next thing to do.
Right. Yeah, it's a really good point you bring on. It's not, like, the biggest problem is not having losses, it's not knowing that you're going to have a loss, because it's knowing that these are the losses I will take, but this is something for the bigger picture, and in the long run it's going to amount for a lot more. Right. Some people don't realize that, and when it hits them from the back, it's a very catastrophic situation for some, because you don't really have a paycheck coming in every month, and then you don't have any money left, and then you're like, all right, what do I do now? Yeah. But it's just grasping for breath, and then after that, way always shows itself, and it's always nice.
Yeah, and those macro decisions are influenced by the micro decisions you make every day. I mean, I've lowered the overhead of my life so low that it didn't matter if I didn't have a paycheck for a while. So, you know, you make those decisions that mitigate risks so that you can have those choices in other areas, and you create balance in your life. It may look totally unbalanced to someone else, but you end up finding what feels comfortable for you. So
Yeah, I completely echo what both of you said. I love the nugget that you said about don't do for the sake of doing. Do because you need to do something. I completely echo that, and I think that that's something that, only our breed of crazy really understands.
Yeah.
And then also, like, hand in hand with that everything seems natural. You might look back and it's a really big step, but it's kind of, excuse the cheese right here, but it's climbing a mountain. I mean, you go one step at a time. You're not taking these massive leaps up in elevation. So it's really just been 4 years of one step at a time. And I have I think a unique situation where we had no startup costs, or my startup cost was covered in the sale of my first ring. And so there wasn't a ton of risk monetarily. I was still a student. It wasn't a big idea that I had that I wanted to act on. It's something that happened naturally and was magnetic and gained traction without me trying, and me not knowing how to run a business, not being a jewelry wearer. It was really funny. But it also, later in the business, so it's been about 4 years, and while I was gone on that 11-month trip that the rings really started to fund, my college roommate at TCU said, "Hey, do you want me to take over the business while you're gone?" And I was like, "I don't have a business." And she's like, "Yeah, you do." So she took over while I was gone, and thought that she would just maintain the shop online and with wholesalers, and it actually grew. And so now we're co-owners, which is really fun to work with one of your best friends. And so now that someone else's livelihood is on the line as well, it does have that pressure, and I guess that just those, I feel like I'm taking bigger steps now. So there's definitely a risk, and it's mainly because people I love are involved and have skin in the game. And also there's a lot more money on the table. And so it's been really interesting to navigate that as a 25-year-old.
Right.
And the hustle only costs your time.
Yeah.
So it's not the same as, you're like, oh, well, if this is risky, you just know what has to happen to avoid the outcome you don't want.
Yeah.
So you're like, okay, well, I have the time to make sure that doesn't happen. Like that's what you do,
Yeah.
So
I think from the outside, a lot of people look at that as, oh, that's too risky or that's too challenging. But I think if you guys talked about is having a vision and being passionate about it, you can kind of see the next step in the big picture. And I think what's important for you guys is to have that vision, but know that one day at a time, if I work hard, I'm going to get it to where I want it to go. And people from the outside that don't have that same vision may not be able to see that. Was there anybody in your process that, as like a mentor, that kind of pushed you to help you where you are today, or kind of said, you know what, you can do this, and I'm going to be right here to help you along the way?
For me, I'll give the cliche answer, my parents. But they have been really helpful. I was in India after graduation, I was in India for 2 years. And I was in a computer science, information technology engineering college. And I didn't really like it. Like, the curriculum was outdated and there wasn't really much that we were doing. I didn't feel like I was achieving anything. So I told him, and then he was totally supportive, and he was like, all right, I'll help you. What do you want to do? Foreign universities, America seems like a place where they would know what to do and technology would be better. So I came here as a computer science major, but even after that, 1.5 years in, I changed my major. Well, actually I added astronomy physics as a second major, but then I changed computer science to mathematics. And then they didn't understand either of it, but they're always supportive. And they're like, all right, no matter what you do, if you like it, you can be the best in it. And that was the thing that they gave me, like, if you want to be an artist, but be the best one you can be. And so that was what drove me to whatever I'm doing, because now I did so much things and I don't know what to do with all of them, but I'm trying to find a reason in all of it and then using it to do whatever I can with whatever I have. So.
Yeah. We'll just keep the cliche train going. I think my parents had a lot to do with me being able to just pick a path and go after it, but I certainly wouldn't have felt comfortable quitting my job to do this full time if my husband wasn't totally 100% on board. I mean, he was like, yeah, you can quit anytime, like, got this, like, it's fine. So, just having those people that are like, it would be silly if you didn't, I would be upset if you didn't do this. Like, that's, laying it on the table of like, I'm 100% confident for you. I'm as confident about it as you are.
Yeah.
And that's a really big deal.
I'll stop the cliche train because when I showed my dad the first ring, he was like, "There's no way people will pay $15 for that." And I was like, "Love you too, Pops." But let's see. I think at the beginning, my professors got excited about what I was doing, and it was neat. Like, Dr. Pitcock bought rings for his daughters for Christmas, and heart melted, whatever. And then I think going from there, my friend base here was, they were so, once it really started catching traction and whatnot, and yeah, it was really special to see them behind me.
Yeah.
And then I think my business partner now, Drew, who went to TCU as well, she, her kind of catching the vision and running with it, and she does it full time out of Austin now. Which is just awesome to me. That's the biggest support I could ask for, is just a partner in crime, person to, I hate the word dream, but
Yeah.
dream
sure.
with.
Yeah.
So, definitely a lot of frogs in the journey.
Yeah, that's great. Kind of going off that, as you guys have expanded, can you kind of touch on how many employees do you guys have, and then how do you bring in people that are as passionate about this as you guys are, and being able to kind of teach them the vision that you guys have?
For us, it was like a hand-in-hand process. Both the questions actually go together for us, because our fee structure, being a startup, we don't really play with a lot of money. It's all tied up in a lot of stuff, and since we're providing cheap services, it's a cheap word, but that's what the reality is. We have, the margins are low. So what we operate on is percentages. So if you work, let's say, contribute 10% to some project, you'd get 10%. So that really gets in people who really do want to work, because you have to work to achieve something in this company. And that's what decides people's position, because my job as a CTO is to just be accountable for technology, but I do everything else as well. Same thing with Avinash. Him being a CEO, he's accountable for the company, but he does everything else as well. And all of us redelegate stuff, and whatever amount of work we do, that's the amount of money and reputation, or respect we get in the company. And that really has brought in people who really believe in the idea. It just weeds out people who don't care. And some people are in the startup market, it's lifers. They are just in it for the life of, having their own business and bragging about it, and going to classes and being like, "Hey, I'm an entrepreneur." And that's, I can't do that, and I want other people who are not like that. So this business model by itself just kind of weeded out people like that, because they'll be in it for a month or two, but they won't do anything. And their position would be null and pointless, because they're not doing anything. So they do have a position, but what does it mean? Nothing.
Yeah.
That's basically one way we do it.
Yeah.
Well, I started as a one-woman show,
Yeah.
and, joke about the hat rack. You just wear every hat.
Right.
You write the checks and you take out the trash. But now I have a team, which feels great. So it fluctuates. So I have a TCU intern program, so I'll usually have at least 2 TCU interns at one time. So I guess the most we've had at one time is 7 so far, and we're looking at a pretty big expansion next year. So we'll be bringing on some more full-time people. But it's really interesting being able to communicate it, or then having an intern come back and say, "Oh, I really want to do this again." And I'm like, "Wow, you do? That's cool." And then hiring her on. And so, it's been really interesting, because I think even in the beginning, when you don't have a formalized onboarding process, you are just naturally a black hole of passion about your business. I feel like I've only just now, kind of a year and a half into it, gotten to the point where I don't talk about it 24/7, because, you live and breathe it, and I know that was super annoying, and my friends, thank God that they're still my friends. But I think, figure out the things that resonate with people, and if you don't have your vision, if you don't have, your core values written out, it makes it a lot harder for people to latch on to the things that resonate with them.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that passion is contagious, and I think entrepreneurs should be very transparent, and people can see right through what you're doing. And if your heart's not in it, if your core is not in it, it's really evident, and it's hard to get people on board. So it was neat to have that transparency and I think that drive. So Go Rings is a 2-woman shop, and so it's me and Drew McElhaney, my TCU roommate, and she does it full-time out of Austin, and we have interns seasonally from UT, which is so fun, because I remember interning at law firms and advertising agencies back at TCU, and so I think getting to kind of put into an internship what I would have wanted to get out of it has been really fun on the other side of things. And so it's been, and cheap labor. So let's see. But we have, we bring people on in kind of unique ways. So how we help people fundraise for mission trips or unpaid internships that they feel called to do is that we take applications on our website and we choose 5 to 7 people a month who we love what they're doing and want to help send them out financially. They drive sales for a calendar month, and we give them 30% of everything that they sell. And so it's been fun to kind of bring people on for a month at a time, and they're not employees and they don't do work for us, but they kind of are advocates and cheerleaders. And so it's been neat to see them catch that passion and that drive because they're jazzed about what they're doing, and we have a little golden solution that can help them get there.
Yeah, no, that's great. Cool. I think incentive goes a long way, and obviously the passion does too. So kind of talk about what your vision is for the next 10 years of your company. Is it to stay with the same company? Is it to expand? Is it to grow into new companies?
That's a good question, because growth is, like, a lot of people think it is unidirectional. But usually when you grow in one direction, you're also growing in other things as well. So it's better to be all encompassing. So you start one thing, like Kastha, with Kastha at least, my vision and my partner's vision is to kind of grow it in as many directions as we can, because startup market is so independent. Like, it doesn't matter which field you lie in, because it's its own little subset that encompasses everything. So you can make one software for law, you can make one software for sports, and another software for arts and for lawmaking, and it all works. So basically, we want to start doing that and have our fingers in a lot of different things. And the reason we want to do that is to be able to get the idea and understanding of that whole world and start a venture capital firm. So that's what I see in 10 years, Kastha transforming into a venture capital firm where instead of doing their own ideas, they're investing in ideas that they think is worth some money, and we hopefully have enough money saved up to invest in those ideas. Yeah. So that's basically, I think, what we should be doing. Yeah.
That's cool. Gosh, 10 years. It's quite the horizon to try to, the one step at a time. It's, part of the balance. But I think more has happened in a year and a half than I thought when I started out. That the leaps and bounds that can happen can really surprise you. But but I have a lot of plans, just trying to figure out, what are the natural things to extend into. But knowing now that Alchemy Pops is one vertical of a larger food company. And so we'll be launching other food product verticals over the next few years. So we've got a couple kind of in development right now that we're going to start testing the concept and getting some feedback on.
That's great.
That's exciting.
Oh, thank you.
Man, yeah, I'm with you. 10 years is really a different ballgame, but 4 years ago, I was wrapping wire around my mascara bottle before the K-State game and didn't know how to make a ring. And so I think that, I have no clue where we'll be, but I would like to continue creating, continue sending people out, continue working with one of my best friends. Yeah. I think making a dent in... helping people get where they want to be. Yeah. Because it's I think Go Rings was a real solution for me in that. Mm-hmm. And and it's been a great journey ever since. So we'll see.
That's awesome.
Long story short.
That's awesome. So I think you guys talked about innovation and expanding and continuing to grow that innovation. how do you balance like that initial where you were at the beginning? You know, I want to make this type of popsicle pops. I want to make, you know, rings, to your innovation cycle. Like, do you sit together with a team and say, hey, this is what I want to be in 10 years, or do you guys take one day at a time?
Basically, it's a subconscious thing for me, at least. Like in the back of my head, it's always like, where is this going to lead?
Okay.
And then if present is what I'm thinking about, and then in the back of the head, it's always like, what is the bigger picture? Because knowing the bigger picture is always a very big part of anything, because if you get too short-sighted, you lose focus of what you need, and you're going in some other direction, and then you need to go. And that is like an obsession, because I'm scared, I guess, because I have done that multiple times, and I'm ADHD to a very high extent, and that really deviates me from anything I'm doing. So I have to constantly have a reality check and be aware of whatever is going on. So that kind of helps me, like as a side thing to know what I need and what I want. So that is pretty helpful, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, as far as innovation goes, it's interesting because when I started Alchemy Pops, you know, I had my vision for it and what our mission statement was and our core values, and really thinking through like the why that I felt drawn to start doing something like this, and that why can apply to quite a few different products. And so that's really what got my mind working about certain types of things that I would be interested in. Things that are immediately relevant to frozen pops would be the most natural thing to do next, and then, you know, continue to think, how can I sell different products to the same customer base that I have now? How do I create something that's new and fun that maybe reaches someone that never wanted to buy a frozen pop from me in the beginning? And thinking through things that I like, and making sure there's always this check-in process with innovation of what you see as that big picture and what you keep front of mind. You have to continually realign that with your personal life, because running your own business is a series of choices of getting bossed by your customers. When you are like, yes, I'm the boss, was like, yeah, there are a lot of things that are influencing control over you and your choices. And so making sure that innovation and the way that you see yourself moving forward matches your whole life is a very different conversation than I ever had as an employee. And so trying to figure out, great, if I launch these two other product verticals, what does that open up in my life that I'm looking for? How do I prevent this from me feeling boxed into just frozen pops? Like, maybe that's not something that I can live with. Okay, well, how do I change that? So having the innovation, yes, it's dictated by the market, knowing what your customers will buy at what price point. But I think being able to find out what those rules are and play with them is the whole point that we got into this. And so you play with them to make it work for you. And so that's how it works. Yeah.
Let's see. When I first started out 4 years ago, we only made rings, and it was great. They sold, and I didn't feel the need to expand or change anything. And then I think 2 years in, we kind of started to feel the itch of creating something new, and so expanded into bracelets, and now earrings, and now different kinds of rings. And so, but they all have like really similar themes. It's all just like gold, 14 karat gold, thin, kind of dainty things. And so I use this example that I would rather be, I mean, you know, people always ask, like, are you gonna make necklaces? Are you gonna make toe rings? Who wears toe rings? I tried. I did try.
Yeah.
And so I say, I don't care about having like quantity. I care about having quality, and I would rather be a Chick-fil-A than a Cheesecake Factory. Like, Cheesecake Factory's menu is like 56 pages, I'm pretty sure. And it's so terrifying. Chick-fil-A, man, they do one kind of chicken and they do it really well. Yep. And so, you know, it looks different ways and whatnot, but I really like sticking with the theme of kind of like what's gotten us to where we are. So I think definitely simplicity and calculated innovations.
Yeah.
And it's funny because I was meeting with my CPA one time. I was like going on first dates with CPAs and trying to figure out who I wanted to work with. And I sat down with this woman and it was hysterical, and basically every conversation someone's like, oh, you should do this, and
Right.
and I was like, yeah, I get that a lot. I'm not gonna do that
Yeah.
though. And she was like, you know what, you shouldn't do that, because I have this conversation with a lot of other clients. When someone makes a recommendation, they're like, that sounds awesome, would you want to pay for that?
Yeah. Yeah.
And turn the question around, because people want to be involved, and it's like an expression of their like tapping into your passion, and they really like that. But it's really funny, you hear it so often. My mom has a saying where they're shoulding on you, and so you try not to should on other people, because it's like you don't know where they're at or what they're trying to do, and without the context you're just making some pretty lame recommendations to them. But it really does come from a good place. People want to feel involved, and I think that's where you get your evangelists and like the ambassadors of your company, but it can be pretty hysterical.
Yeah. I think a lot of people want to give their input, but they don't want to do the work behind it. They don't want to actually be on top of it.
Yeah.
Can you guys kind of talk about how much work it actually has been over the last couple of years, and kind of maybe the hours, and how do you balance work and life and fit those two together?
One big part of having, I think I didn't talk about this, why I have my own business is because of my ADHD, I can't really pay attention on one thing. So I'm not good with compartmentalizing time. So it's like I set up schedules for a week. By the end of the week, I need this done. And I would be watching TV and then writing a research paper at the same time, and then making a prototype for some app. And then it's always like, something else comes to mind, and I'm like, all right, I should do that now. And it helps me stop getting burnt out, because that's a thing with me. I don't know if it is for other people. Like if I do the same thing again and again. So I do not try to control myself. I try to make way for my own weird brain and try to kind of accommodate it, I guess. And that helped. And having my own business, I'm able to do that. So that was one big selling point. So that's usually my schedule. It's like, I don't know what I'm doing today, but I know what I'm doing at this general time.
Yeah, every day is different. I don't think I want to know the number of hours that that's one of the things I think that we joke a lot about. There's sort of a naive optimism among entrepreneurs, because you sort of need to block out like how hard you're working sometimes. And I have another TCU alum who graduated my year, and she is running an online clothing company, and she lives in Kansas City, and we are kind of our vent texters. So when we're doing something that is like the not great part of business, we'll text each other. And it's good to have just like that one person where like, I get it. The amount of work can be overwhelming when you think about it too much, because it's a lot easier to keep the next step mentality. But I've texted her from the production kitchen at 2 a.m. on a Friday night and being like, yeah, I could have be texting you from coming home from a bar, but like I am not. So like I am definitely still working.
Yeah.
And so you try to make up for it. I try to make Mondays sort of like a weekend for myself, because I haven't had a weekend in a long time.
Yeah.
Even when you take a weekend, I had the first weekend that I took to go visit friends, I still had 3 events that my team was running, and so I never really felt away anyway. So vacation is different to me. I mean, that was my first one, and everything was fine. We got paid. Everybody got their pops. It was, because it's like, this is not rocket science. Like people are eating pops. So it's hard to let it go, but I think the number of hours is something obscene. I don't know what it is, because when I started the business when I still had my full-time job. So I would wake up at 5 a.m. and work on Alchemy Pops, and then I would get ready and I would go to work, and then I would come home and I would keep working on Alchemy Pops, and then I would work on it on the weekends. And so at that time, I know I was working a horrifying amount of hours and like getting less fun to be around. But once I quit my job, at that point, it just got to the point where something had to give for me not to go insane. And so then, since then, the hours are still a lot, but there's so much more getting to make way for what you need to do and what you want to do, rather than all work all the time.
Yeah.
But you have to be willing to do that sometimes.
Right.
Because there isn't someone else who's going to do it.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, we, Drew, my business partner, and I, whenever we kind of get in that gritty situation where we're doing something that we're not crazy about, we just look at each other and say, grind till you shine. Like, we saw it on like a graffiti in Memphis one time, and it's just kind of our thing, just grind till you shine. So definitely starting out when I was a student, it was nonstop. And it was before I was willing to call Go Rings a business. But on the road trip out to spring break, it was just making rings in the car the whole time and whatnot. And now that I have someone to share the load with, it's changed the game. And she and I are wired extremely differently, and so it's the yin and the yang. And so she's all numbers, logistics, goals. I'm like hearts, people, things, shiny. You know? So,
Squirrel.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So it's really nice. I think having different work that we each enjoy, and so it makes the load a lot lighter. But it also, I mean, Christmas time is insane. I don't want to count the hours that I'm working. I don't want to count how many like packages we've sent out or how, bloody our fingers are. But I'm excited because we have just gotten people to produce our rings out of Haiti. And so it's really exciting that I think it'll change the game. But so I think the course of an entrepreneur, your work will change. Like, the bulk of my work used to be production, and now it's magically not going to be. And so, we get to kind of like dig our hands in the dirt and kind of, see like what's next, how can we improve, how can we refine things.
Yeah, going off that, can you touch a little bit on, now that you maybe aren't going to be making the rings as much, is that nerve-wracking for you that you're not going to be able to have your hands on the products, or is it more of a relief?
Yes.
Mixed bag.
Yes.
It's a mixed bag.
Yes, I really, we've tried several different production solutions because we've had this awesome problem, but still a problem that our demand has always been higher than our supply. And so it's, we had to kind of go back to, what do we want out of Go Rings? Do we want handmade rings? Like someone was talking about 3D printing them, and I just thought, like, 3D printing rings? What the heck? That you can do that? That would be so nice. But then it's not handmade, and we found out that that's something that's really valuable to us, is hand making everything. And so then we really wanted our, I think, production to go further than just paying someone. We could pay college students who are working their way through school, but instead we've chosen to employ people who are transitioning out of homelessness and hard situations. And so it's been neat to work with people like that, where I think that our dollars are going further. And so now I'm like really amped to produce out of Haiti. We're working with this awesome organization, and I'm really excited to support their families. And so having that off of my hands is exciting. Also,
I'm sure. Yeah.
We'll see.
Yeah.
Control, right?
Yeah.
I'm sure that everybody here has had to deal with, relinquishing control and delegating and the magic and terror of delegating.
That's a very good point. Like, everybody, I think, brought up one point, which is like the unsaid truth of entrepreneurship. It's a 24-hour job. Yeah. You're taking breaks doing something else, but you're usually working 24 hours. It depends what you do. Like, is it menial work? Is it more mental work? Is it just, you running errands? But it's always constantly going on, and depends on how you have to go in with that mentality, knowing that you would need to give 48 hours straight, all-nighters, if you need to. If not, then, you're taking a break to take sleep, like take a nap or something. And so,
Naps are good.
Naps are good.
So, that's one thing. That's the hard truth, I guess.
Yeah. And the things, I think it goes along with like things happening fast and slow. It's the things that you really want are also really hard. Of like, the first time I brought someone in to help prep and make the popsicles was like, it was really tough. I was like, I feel like you're intruding, but like, this is good. This is what I want. And so it's really hard to balance your emotions when you let someone into something that is so personal. It's very difficult to risk that vulnerability and to have someone take advantage of something that you've worked so hard on, because it's not just your time, it's your tears, it's your blood, it's your sweat, it's ridiculous thing. I know we could all say ridiculous things we never thought we would do for the sake of our business. And we did them, but you wouldn't ever expect anyone else to do that. So it's a balance of trying to figure out what you're asking of people, and that they like respect and love it.
Yeah. I think along those lines, it's a neat point when your brain is going to be more useful than your hands, or more valuable than your hands. And so you can always teach hands, but you can't, like necessarily, implant your vision and drive and dreams into someone else's mind and core, really.
Their integrity.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
You just have
to
talk about risk.
Right.
Yeah, that's where it is. And particularly it's really common among business partners. I mean, that's like getting married. You're trusting someone so much with a lot of money, with a lot of relationships, a lot of financial and social capital is tied up in that relationship that can be ruined, if things don't go right. So it's different that the things that generally like your friends and family will say are the risky things are not the actual risks that are more involved with your business.
Right.
Totally.
Yeah, kind of going off that, what's been like one of the most challenging moments, or one defining moment that's just really either frustrated you or almost made you say, I can't do this anymore? Is there one specific time that you were very challenged or frustrated?
I would say
We're like
there have
flipping
been
through
many
a Rolodex
moments.
of
Yeah.
these moments. Yeah.
Exactly.
My
Like so many
scrapbook.
moments. Exactly. Like everything now seems the same. Like it's a short-term failure that I overcame. So at that moment, it felt like the worst thing possible, but I knew I have gone through other worst thing possibles. So it just...
I've been here before.
Yeah, I've been here before, so it just, I knew what the process is. I'm going to panic, then I'm going to realize, and then I'm going to be, all right, that seems like a solution, and then think more on it, and then solidify it. And then I'll be like, phew, that was good.
Yeah.
And that's the end of the thing. And so I try to remember that. Like, I try to be pessimistic about the future, optimistic about the past. So most of my past knowledge is positive. Future, I'm always like completely negative, because like that helps me be a positive person outside, because if I don't expect anything from anyone, then everything is a pleasant surprise.
Yeah.
So
It's true.
works.
Yeah.
So, and present, be a realist, I guess.
Well, I think it's really funny too. I mean, kind of thinking about what you learn in entrepreneurial management degree, right? I think there's this general feeling in the stories we tell ourselves about I'm good with numbers, or I'm confident and I can start a business. Those things don't matter.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, it's your perseverance.
Okay.
It's your guts. Like if you're willing to gut it out. And like I can definitely think of, I remember the first time I got attacked online about my business, and I ugly cried. I mean, it was so gut-wrenching, and I could not believe someone would be so mean-hearted.
Yeah.
And I was like, they don't realize that this is a person, that they see it as an entity, that it's like behind this corporate veil of like no emotion. And I was like, I'm as emotional as I've ever, So yeah, the first time that happened, it was really horrible. And like I let myself cry about it, which I think not enough entrepreneurs are willing to fess up to like all of the heartache that goes into a business. Because you are putting yourself out there, and like you're being willing to fail, and the last thing that you're going to let happen is fail. So it's hard work. But I think that gut wrenching, you figure out how to deal with the emotional roller coaster, because the ups and downs are extreme. Yeah. And some days you're like, wow, I'm not doing anything I want to do, and I've made this horrifying mistake. And, but then I think part of it is changing your vocabulary, because Seth Godin's book, The Dip, is really good. And I think it is a lot about framing and semantics, because when you think of something as a dip and not the more common phrase of trough of sorrow, like that's a very different place to be saying that you're in. Like you're in a dip. Like this is that. It's a short-term downturn. That is what a dip is. And so trying to... I think we're constantly tricking ourselves. Like, that's just like a process of telling yourself the right story. Because I think the rear view mirror that looks very positive, like we're also very good at telling the story of how we pivoted our product mix, or you know, all of the ways that we talk about business that actually mean like I got punched in the face at my launch and then I turned it around. So that's actually what happened and felt like. But when we talk about it, we're like, yeah, we pivoted our product mix and we approached a different investor and we tried a new marketing strategy. You know, that is not what it felt like. So I think that it's like at every turn, you do feel like sort of this warrior weariness, but then it makes you more confident and you're like, wow, I killed that. Like, it didn't kill me. I'm still trucking, you know, or whatever. Yeah.
Man, I guess pivots. There's two that come to mind. One was when I first started out, the material that I used was gold-plated copper wire that I got at the Joann's off of Hewlin. And so it really worked for exactly what I needed it to work for. But after, 2 years, I'd see that people didn't know how to care for their rings, or some people were allergic to copper, and it would really annoy me to see rings that were ill cared for. And so we kind of decided to like really make a big leap and go from gold-plated copper wire, which has like no cost, to 14 karat gold. And so working with a lot more weight and a lot more money, and our price point was doubling, and but I just thought, man, like if we really are going quality over quantity, then this is, I think, a necessary move. And so we took our like classic ring off of the internet and just kind of like went like this to see, and it was awesome because our number of rings sold stayed the same and then grew, and our profits more than doubled. Wow. So it just ended up being a really great move, but it was like one of those cringing, like, is this real? And why am I the one making this decision? And so it ended up being a great pivot. And then another pivot that we're facing right now, I guess that a decision that we made 2 weeks ago, is my business partner lives in Austin and does it full time, and I live in Denver, and I kind of am more of a advisor role now, and so we need two brains in one room, and so I'm gonna start like traveling to Austin a lot, basically for work. But it's like, is my life in Denver for the past 2 years worth forsaking for my like business child? And so, baby business. Yeah, I think it's been, I've really felt the weight of entrepreneurship in the past 2 weeks, because it's a really fresh decision, and I'm really excited about taking that step. And I think to kind of like go back to like bring it a little full circle, it's, I'm not doing it for the sake of doing it. It's something that I have to do. And it also feels like a really natural, I think, progression of where we're headed, but it definitely feels like a big step. So I'm kind of in that cringe motion, like figuring out what that's going to look like. And so I hope that it's a corner that we're turning that will really benefit us. Yeah,
because long-term happiness isn't about doing stuff that makes you happy every day. There are definitely things that contribute to your long-time happiness that suck. That you're just like, okay, and sometimes you do feel cornered into it, but you're like, this is ultimately what I want, and I'm not going to be happy without it. And that's the thing too, of understanding like that emotional roller coaster. You couldn't reach the highs that we get if we didn't have to go through the lows, and realizing that the unfun parts contribute to like a life you want to be living. So it's very much the mentality and the perspective.
Yeah, no, I think you made a great point. As I talked to my senior friends, we were like, what is the perfect job? What's the perfect situation? And there is no perfect job, and there's no perfect situation. And I think we're nervous about getting that first job, and it truly doesn't matter if you're passionate about it. And I think if you realize that every single day has to be hard work for the long-term success and long-term, goals, I think that's important. So you guys talked about the challenges leading to, something good coming out of those challenges. Can you guys kind of talk on one main accomplishment or one of your proudest moments to date?
since I can't choose between any of my like software ideas or anything, I would, because I don't want to choose the favorite baby. It's just I would say graduating from TCU. That was one of the proudest moments. I would say it helped me a lot. That's what made me who I am. And I say one thing is, I didn't learn much in undergraduate. Undergraduate school is not about learning. It's about learning who you are. Mm-hmm. It's about knowing yourself, because you are for the first time outside by yourself with a new social structure, and you're trying to adapt, make new friends. It's a jungle, and it's a fun jungle, and it's a nice learning experience. And by the time I got out, I knew how to get things done, because I had that time crunch. Like, even though I don't want to go study these things, and a lot of this stuff is not what I want to do, but I know that I can do this because I have already done it. So it just, that thing just helped me with this whole ordeal. But the success would be TCU, and then also Fort Worth. It's one of the best startup markets at this point, so that also TCU contributed with that, because no other universities around here. Mm-hmm. So yeah, TCU, for sure.
That's true. It's hard. If I had to pick something general, I mean, honestly, it would be last year, which I know is like a terrible answer to pick one thing. But within 3 months, my company had been, the project I launched on Kickstarter was successfully funded to get it going. And within 3 months, I'd also been a top finalist of the Fort Worth Business Plan competition. And so being able to have such a roll of momentum, and then the next month I quit my job. So it was like a 4-month span last year where like everything happened at one. It didn't feel like it was happening all at one time. It felt very stressful and it felt crazy, but it all seemed to happen. So in my mind, it's kind of like this one moment, even though it was 4 months of my life where I think I like was birthed as an entrepreneur. You know, like you feel like you're like born to be an entrepreneur, whatever, like things people say. I don't disagree with those things, but there's certainly like a turning point where like you're on the hook, like it's really happening. And the fact that I got to the point of it really happening last year is something I'm really, really proud of.
Yeah, that's great.
I think that initially with just the product of Go Rings, not really the business, raising all the money that I needed to take that 11-month mission trip was huge. Yeah. It was so exciting that I didn't have to write an annoying letter to ask people to donate money to something, and that I kind of felt like I had, pulled myself up from my own bootstraps, but with so much help and so many people excited around me, it was so exciting to like check the bank account and see that number had been hit. It was huge. It was so exciting. And then I think once I would start calling Go Rings a business, it's gonna sound nerdy. I'm okay with it.
Those are the best things.
Is that so? When I was in college, I started an Etsy shop so that I could, sell online. It was a really easy platform to do that. And again, wasn't planning on starting a business, so it was just a really easy name to be under. And so we'd get a lot of sales on Etsy, and I think a lot of people found us, through shopping on Etsy. So they weren't looking for Go Rings. They were browsing on Etsy and then stumbled across us, maybe read the story, liked it, bought a ring. And so we, probably like a year in, we bought our domain and started an online shop, and we'd get, some orders from it. And then I think the scales tipped, and so the moment when we got significantly more sales on our website, people were seeking out Go Rings. People knew our brand. People, were intentionally, it still is crazy to me, intentionally like buying a product that I made instead of just stumbling across it was crazy. And so now, we're like shutting down our Etsy shop because it is not as powerful as our brand is. Yeah. And that just gets me jazzed. Yeah. So it was a really nerdy, cool moment where I'm like, man, we don't need Etsy.
Right. Yeah. Wow. Really quickly, one more question, and under about 10 seconds each, but one piece of advice you'd give to somebody that wants to maybe start their own business.
I think going back to most of the stuff we discussed, know what you need to do, and it will be a calling, and as you do it, it'll feel right. Because left brain, right brain, you don't really talk to left brain, but it's always convincing you to do things. So if it is convincing you to do something, venture in, and always know when to get out though. Because a lot of people really go in really deep and don't really know how to get out, like they're far too deep in. So knowing the out and knowing that you always have the option is always a good thing.
I would say just start. Just start. Take action, and you've already done more than most people are ever going to do.
Awesome.
Don't start something just to start something.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for joining in today. Again, I'm Taven Sparks, and I really appreciate you guys coming out and being able to hear about where our young TCU alumni are and hearing about their businesses. So thank you guys so much. Have an awesome day.